Tyrone Tracy, Tank Dell, Rashee Rice, Jayden Reed, Zay Flowers, Puka Nacua all have in common. These are some of the biggest standout players from the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowls over the last couple of seasons, with rookies becoming more and more valuable in fantasy and dynasty. These are the biggest names that you need to know going into the season if you're going to have an edge over your league mates. So we brought in Cecil Lammey, who was at both of these. Cecil, and you've just been going to these games for years. You've had so much practice scouting these players. While everyone else was saying Bo Nix was a big loser last year, you were calling him a really good player. And look at that. His rookie season was awesome. And Cecil, the list of players that we have here, we don't really have quarterbacks. And I just want to start off with the quarterbacks here because a lot of these guys, they get called winners, losers. Jaxon Dart's a first-round pick. Other people saying he's a day 3 guy. Jalen Milroe's got the smallest hands known to mankind. What did you see out there with the quarterbacks?
Yeah, and I'll go with the Shrine Bowl. It was just about Shadur, and before we jump in, I do have to say 19 years in a row, all because of Chris Mortensen. God bless and RIP to Chris Mortensen. I was standing next to him at Broncos training camp when Mike Shanahan was still coach, because again, I'm old. Don't let the makeup fool you. And Chris was talking about how he got into the NFL. How did you become Chris Mortensen? Well, he said he was a beat writer, reporter, like high school sports in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And somebody said, oh, you want to cover the NFL? Go to the Senior Bowl. That's where the NFL's at. And yeah, it's been 19 years and I'll miss a year. I think I'll do 20 and retire. I've been talking about that, like doing 20 and then retiring, because no one can touch that record. But like, I don't know.
We'll start to send Dave, because Dave loves the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl. He loves them. We'll send him for 20
We'll make
years.
him fall in love with it, because I think you will fall in love. Now, certain years are different. I've seen some years where great quarterback play. I saw a year and I had a team, I'll tell you off air who it was. I had a team just ask me like, hey, write up the quarterbacks for us. Who's the best quarterback here? It was Nathan Peterman. And I feel so bad. But I was like, okay, it was like Josh Dobbs, Nathan Peterman. Like, so sometimes at the Senior Bowl, the quarterbacks aren't great, Bob. And well, last year
sometimes you get Justin Herbert.
Yeah, exactly. And in that game, Justin Herbert was there, and he was head and shoulders above everyone, right? Because it's a measuring stick. You see these guys go through the same drills. That was Jalen Hurts, Steven Montez, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert. Herbert was like head and shoulders. Love didn't look like he knew what he was doing. Utah State, of course, he didn't know what he was doing. So took him some time, and you get going. And Hurts, have we seen the maximum of Hurts? Yeah, pretty much. But he's in the Super Bowl anyway. So this year, like the Jaxon Dart stuff, I was excited going in. Like, okay, like what's the hype real? What's here? And I see a mid-round pick. I see a guy that's a developmental prospect. I see a guy that needs more time, because again, I've seen the Justin Herberts at these games. They jump off the page. When you're at this game, they jump off the page. Michael Penix and is just way he could sling that thing last year. It was off the page. Bo Nix was bad on Tuesday, better on Wednesday, and then the best quarterback on Thursday, which is what you want to see. The game doesn't matter. I haven't gone to the game in 19 years. Never gone to the game. Game doesn't matter. MVP of the game doesn't matter. So with Jaxon Dart, I'm like, I don't fall for the hype with what everyone was saying, because he wasn't jumping off the page. He was the best of the quarterbacks that I saw, but that's because Dylan Gabriel's out there, and Gabriel has a nice arm, but he's tiny. Jalen Milroe can run, but he doesn't know what to do with the ball. He did get better as the week went on, so we'll praise that, right? But that is a rough prospect. So I try not to crush a guy before the pre-draft process. I don't want to. Remember when Connor Cook's parents years ago went after people? I never got an email or a phone call, but I have friends in the industry that were gone after by Connor Cook's parents. So I never try to crush a kid, but I wouldn't take Jaxon Dart before the 3rd round. And Jalen Milroe is more of like a day 3 type of pick. These guys will both get overdrafted because it's not a quarterback driven league, fellas. It's a quarterback desperate league.
Yep.
It certainly is. Between the two, though, at the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl, you're at both. You talk about these players that just kind of jump off the paper, as you say, or jump off the page, as you say. Were there any quarterbacks that fit the bill for you this year, or was it overall just a little bit disappointing between both practices?
Yeah, it was really disappointing. Now, thank God they're with Broncos goggles on. I was like, well, I don't have to look at any of these guys.
Right,
Unless
yeah.
you're talking about late round guys, which is, again, where dynasty comes in to play. And you're like, okay, maybe there's something there with Brady Cook from Mizzou or something like that. Not really. The Miller kid, Cam Miller from North Dakota State, he was interesting in terms of what if Easton Stick wasn't any good? Oh, there's Cam Miller, so it's like we kind of have to do a pro comp for these guys, and some people get uncomfortable with that, but that's just the way to make it more bite-sized for everyone out there. It's like, no, even as late round picks, if I was a team like the Broncos needing a backup, I would not be looking at these rookies as any sort of developmental, like long-term guys. Could totally be wrong. Again, quarterback eval, if anyone has the answer, they'll be the richest man on the planet. But like, I was not impressed with any of these quarterbacks, really.
You talk about it being a quarterback desperate league. Of course, we're talking about the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowls, the kids coming in, but the free agency class isn't all that great either. You got Sam Darnold, and if you miss on Sam Darnold, it's Russell Wilson and Daniel Jones as the fallback. So I think that we're going to see a pretty big disparity in the league this year between the haves and the have-nots, the teams with quarterbacks and the teams that are still searching for theirs.
Well, and I think that's why it's off subject, so I'll keep it somewhat brief, although I'm a chatty blankety blanker. Like, we saw bad football most of this year. Like, all of September sucked. October and November were okay. December kind of sucked. The playoffs have sucked, except for a couple of games here or there. Why? You have about 10 quarterbacks in this league that are worth a crap. And you have, now I do math, 22. There's that country education. You have about 22 quarterbacks that just either they're kidding themselves or they're over the hill or they're just jokes. Like, this league is, again, I'm not going to do the Mark Cuban fat pigs get slaughtered, but this league's in trouble unless they get better quarterback play, better fit for these guys. Well, this quarterback class outside Shadur Sanders, it's not really going to help.
I have a lot I could say about that, but I think we're already getting totally off the rails here.
I'm
Already,
sorry, I do that.
within
I
the
do
first
that.
few minutes. I love the comment about the Senior Bowl MVP like not really mattering, and I think my favorite thing seeing is the Giants going with Davis Webb, Kyle Lauletta, and Daniel Jones, while being bookended by Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert as the Senior Bowl MVPs. And it just didn't hit for them. Hit for them ever. Speaking of Senior Bowl MVPs, let's start right there with Jack Bech, the wide receiver from TCU, who not only did he have himself a good game, it was obviously a very trying week with everything that happened with his brother and terrorist attack down in Louisiana, but he had himself a big week at the Senior Bowl, and he was one of these guys that I don't know that anyone said he had a bad week or even struggled at any point. He's one of these physical zone beating type big slot wide receivers, excellent hands, one drop on 96 targets. My comp was Puka Nacua in the Football Guys rookie guide, and heard that flying around. It feels weird to comp a guy to someone so good in the NFL. Cease, what did you think about Jack Bech?
I saw Puka Nacua at that game. Like, I don't think that's far off at all whatsoever. In fact, I'm going to steal that. it's a really good one. It's a really good one. And with his game, and once in a while you'll see, I'll be the old man in the bleachers. You'll see sometimes. I remember when Dameon Pierce was there, and the Senior Bowl is a little touristy for me. I'll sound like an aloha here, but whatever, I don't care. Like, there's just too many fans with badges. Basically, I'm there for the ball. If we want to talk shop, talk to me at the barbecue spot. Don't talk to me during practice. But when Dameon Pierce was there, and everyone's like, Dameon Pierce, I'm like, I mean, he's okay. I felt the same way this year, but in unison is what I'm trying to say. Is like when you see someone like Bech in unison, where everyone's like, oh my God, he's doing it. He's doing it. This isn't any sort of like Khalil Shakir, got to dig it out. Romeo Dobbs got to dig it out. Although both of those were outstanding at the Senior Bowl. I loved his my ball mentality. I love the fact that this is their biggest job interview. And you'll watch practice. And I know Allen Iverson is just practice, but you have to take it. You have to take it and run with it. And too many players are just out there going through the motions. You did not see that with him at all whatsoever. My ball mentality, every drill, he treated it like the Super Bowl, right? Every drill, he was out there giving full force effort. Walkthroughs to walkthrough, but like in regular one-on-one drills and 7-on-7 drills and in team drills, you saw full effort. You saw outstanding play. And what he did is he matched what he showed on film, which is what I'm always looking for. Does a guy surprise me and make me go back and watch, good and bad? Either what did I miss or like, oh, this guy kind of sucks. What's the matter? Or does he go, oh, that's what he looked like on film? Yeah, this was the TCU version right on film in Mobile every day.
Yeah, he's an LSU transfer, and so I think a lot of people see the helmet TCU and they think, oh, they don't really produce many good wide receivers.
Right.
If that was an LSU helmet all week, people are going gaga over him. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yep.
Another guy that it's interesting because there's a lot of mixed opinions on: is he an outside receiver, a slot receiver? Is he fast? Is he agile? Is he slow? He weighed in a little heavier and measured in a little shorter. Jalen Royals, the wide receiver from Utah State, where he came in at 5'11", 210. Doesn't have like awesome long speed, but he's good at making tacklers miss. He had some good reps there at the Senior Bowl. A little bit of like a Chris Godwin and Deebo Samuel, but not quite to that level. He's one of those mid-round, maybe day 3 guys. Cease, what did you think of Jalen Royals when he was there at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, and there's no tackling, of course, because it's practice, but you can see that run after the catch ability. You can see the ability with Royals for him to beat people with moves, with speed. He's got quickness. He's got the hands there as well. But what I enjoyed is that after the catch, where you'd have to decipher, like, was that a tackle? Would he have been tackled there? I don't know. So, like you said, not quite Deebo, but Deebo type skills and a player
more like a
that,
Josh Downs,
yeah,
Jayden Reed type of guy.
yeah, maybe something like that, where he's going to go out there, he's going to snatch the ball out of there. He always, in fact, you're listening. I was telling a young friend out there, Gage, when we were at the Shrine Bowl, I said, listen to the way they catch the ball. It's weird, but the way they catch it will tell you how cleanly it is. With Royals, it was almost as if he snatched it out of the air. He wouldn't let the pass come to him. It was more of a grab, like he's tearing it out of the air. So you love to see that. The run after the catch skill is there. Fun to watch. One of the fun players. That's what we go for, right? You want to see the fun players. You want to see who stands out. And from a small school, Royals can certainly do that.
No, I think these are the guys that got overlooked a few years ago in the NFL because they were undersized, coming from a small school. We were worried about how skills would translate to the NFL, but with the way the NFL has changed now, protecting player safety, things like that, we see these small guys just get plugged into a pure slot role, and they can eat up so many targets and be very valuable for fantasy football. So Jalen Royals was already a guy that I started to like a little bit, and hearing the buzz coming out of the Senior Bowl has just made me like him even more.
You should. And speaking of small, I don't know how, because I went into this week going, Tez Johnson is 150 pounds. I don't care if he's Bo Nix's brother. And then I fell in love with him because like Royals, now Royals has the size and everything that you need, but at 156 pounds, Tez Johnson was 7'11". He was always open. He was uncoverable. And he was doing what I called the reverse Saquon. It sounds dirty, Joe. It's not dirty, but the reverse Saquon, where instead of like jumping over guys backwards, guys would go to like thud him, because there's thudding, there's not tackling, but you can thud a guy up. So guys would go to thud him, and he would like duck under, like some Scooby-Doo stuff, right? He's like ducking under.
Just little rascals right between their legs.
Exactly, right? The little giants, whatever. But so I was like, I mean, Royals is legit, and Tez Johnson is legit, but I don't know at 156 pounds. I mean, I saw his frame. I don't know if he can put 10 pounds of muscle on to get him to 165, make me feel a little bit better, like a guarantee on the box, so I can sleep at night. But Tez Johnson was one of those amazing, outstanding, like players of the week. It's just like, man, is he tiny. I don't know how that works in the NFL.
Well, we've seen over the past few years that these, let's call them all-star weeks, are kind of like a debutante ball for just undersized slot receivers, whether it's Tank Dell or any of these guys that have been doing it year over year. It's becoming a place where slot receivers, players who are good route runners that can get open, they win in one-on-ones, because that's what it's set up to do.
Yep. Hunter Renfrow did that.
Yes. Another guy. Moving on from the wide receivers, because it is a good batch, but this year's draft feels like it is really about running backs and tight ends. And one of the running backs that I know you've mentioned potentially as a player for the Broncos, Devin Neal, running back from Kansas. Everything that I had originally seen from him was these big plays, and I was like, oh, he must be one of these like small, shifty, speedy guys. And then I check him out going through the scouting process, and then he weighs in at 220 at the Senior Bowl. This is a dude, he's a one-cut runner that's surprisingly agile for his size, has some good receiving ability, and just every time he gets hit, he is pushing that pile, getting the extra tough yards. He's going to be one of those guys that's probably a rotational back, but has the promise to actually be an every down back.
Yeah, and I've often said, if you can't get Ashton Jeanty, who is Saquon-like, and when I float out that comp and NFL people don't laugh at me, I go, oh, Okay, it must be a pretty good comp. I've heard people say Emmitt Smith. That makes me very uncomfortable with Ashton Genty, but hey, maybe that's what everyone's going to say. Whenever I say from a Broncos perspective, like if you don't get Genty at 20 or move up, get Devin Neal. Now, that doesn't mean Devin Neal in the second. Give Devin Neal probably in the third. This running back class is so thick. I said 12 backs in the first 3 rounds. Other people, Chad Ryder from NFL Network, who I talked to in Dallas at the Shrine, he said 10. Well, 12, 10, whatever. Close enough. There's going to be double-digit running backs in the first 3 rounds, and they all can play. They all can play. There's undrafted guys that I saw at this All-Star trip that can play. But Devin Neal can play, as you mentioned, a slashing style. He says he's more Joe Mixon, and I did an interview with him at the Senior Bowl one-on-one, which was outstanding. But he says he's more Joe Mixon, but he does get the Alvin Kamara comps. He has talked to the Broncos, by the way. Guys talk to a lot of people, but it's just nice to chew on here during the offseason of who are they talking to when you're talking to Devin Neal. Why? Because he can do it all, and he can catch out of the backfield. So at 220, which is where he says he wants to play, man, that's a guy like Alvin Kamara, 3rd-round pick. Kamara was a backup to John Kelly, and Sean Payton just saw him popping because they were watching John Kelly. He was like, well, who's the backup? And John Kelly never did anything. I had hopes for him in my deep dynasty team because I was like, that's the guy that kept Alvin Kamara on the bench, and he didn't play. So, but Devin Neal didn't have anybody in front of him. He was the man, and he can do it all, and backed it up. Not the best back. Rashard Smith was the best back, the SMU kid, the first day. But what I always want to see, and God bless, I can't remember the name of the New Hampshire receiver that Sig and I saw at our first Shrine Bowl, my first Shrine Bowl. But he popped on day 1, then didn't do anything the rest of the week. I'm not saying Rashard Smith is that, but as you saw the week go on, Neal kept getting better. Rashard Smith was the best the first day, and then he was just kind of okay the next 2 days. So you love seeing that kind of surge. And observing with a running back, it's difficult. No tackling in these things. So
Right.
How do they move? What's their speed like? I think Devin Neal's testing of his combine speed will really get people talking of, is that a 5th-round pick or is that a 3rd-round pick? I don't care where he's at. Just pick him because he can play.
Yeah, and I think you talk about the abilities as a pass catcher. You can see it. It just wasn't a big part of the scheme at Kansas. They weren't throwing the ball a lot. So I think a lot of people are going to look at the college production and kind of pigeonhole him into this early down back only, but he is much more well-rounded than I think his college stats imply. So Neal is a guy that I've really fallen in love with just from watching him play. He's an exciting guy that can rip off big plays. And like you alluded to, you kind of stole my thunder here saying that he can't catch the ball, because I've heard so many people say that he can't, when the reality was he just wasn't asked to often in college.
Yeah, and I would say everyone listen to Matt Waldman because it's the way you catch the ball. It's not
Yes.
the number of catches, right? It's the way you're catching the ball. How can teams utilize you? And Neal fits that bill for a 3-down back. And this draft is so full because it's a smorgasbord. It's a buffet. Like, do you want the pass catcher only? Do you want the 3-down back? Do you want the power back? Like, what kind of back do you want? They've got it all in this year's draft.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when Ken Walker III couldn't catch a single pass because he allegedly did not have hands attached to his body. And then this past year, 46 receptions. It happens, guys. We can't look at just numbers coming out of college.
Yeah, I think another good example was Josh Jacobs, a guy who didn't really catch
Mhm.
passes in his first couple of years in the league, in that John Gruden offense, wasn't asked to catch passes, and then all of a sudden evolves into a new offense, and it's like, oh, he can catch the ball when they asked him to. They just didn't ask him to for 3 years.
Yeah, and what's funny, Dave, is he was seen as the change of pace guy that could come in on
Mhm.
passing downs when he was at Alabama, and then he goes
Right.
to the pros and it doesn't happen, and then he gets the weird, ever elusive, never scoring a receiving touchdown for years and years.
Scheme fit. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, it matters. Turns out. Moving on here. I mentioned this is a big class for tight ends, and we might see a crazy number of these guys go in the first 2 rounds. And a couple of guys, I kind of just want to package them together because I think they're going to be talked a lot about together and probably get drafted in a similar range in the NFL draft. Elijah Arroyo and Mason Taylor, tight ends out of Miami and LSU. Arroyo is one of these guys who, not much of a blocker, but he's a fast, fluid route runner. He can beat linebackers, beat safeties. He's going to be a big-time receiving threat. Mason Taylor is a pretty good do-it-all, classic inline tight end. And then me, being a Miami boy, I love it. He's the son of Jason Taylor, and he's got the good bloodlines, smart player. Cease, are these guys worthy of going in maybe the 2nd round of NFL drafts? And should fantasy managers be looking at these guys? Because we've seen rookie tight ends can actually produce now. It's not like the old days.
Yeah, and both of them with some outstanding play there. And I'll start with Arroyo first. He didn't get open as easily as I thought he would. That was the thing. And now maybe it's my preconceived notion heading into a game, and I always have to kind of try to put that away because I'm like, I'm expecting this to be a Harold Fannin, and I'll get to in a little bit. I expected it to be a big week. It was not. Arroyo, I expected it to be a big week. It was not in my opinion. I saw Jimmy Graham at the Senior Bowl, who played 1 year of college. What do you have? 17 catches in that year? Like I saw Jimmy Graham go like, oh my God, nobody can cover this guy. I didn't get that feel with Arroyo, and it's not just the helmet scouting thing. It's just like his athletic profile. We know he can't block. It's embarrassing when he blocked. There was a play they ran. It was a power play, and so there's motion. There's a tight end that motions over, and then you go to block on this toss play essentially. And you saw a play. Harold Fannin, effort blocker, got his hands on the guy. It was Cody, the Minnesota linebacker kid. And then next play, about 4 plays later, same play, it's Arroyo, totally whiffs. Totally whiffs, has no idea what he's doing. So nobody expected him to block. But as a receiver, you should be doing more than he did. You should be getting open. Now, there were a couple of plays where you go, oh, Arroyo, nice play, right? A couple of plays, made the notebook. But it's like not as much as I thought. So take that for whatever it's worth. I'm not saying second round, say more like third round in the NFL. I think that's the case there. With Mason Taylor, should get drafted higher because he is an effort blocker. He had the week that I thought Harold Fannin would have. So excited about him. Zach Thomas's nephew, in addition to Jason Taylor's son. So I have a Frank Gore Jr. Auntie Chill when I think about who his aunt is and Joy Taylor, but Auntie Chill. But Mason Taylor, yes, very good. Mason Taylor did all the things you wanted, right? He did everything that you wanted in terms of blocking, receiving ability, effort, hustle. He had the week. He wasn't the best tight end there. The most consistent tight end was Terrence Ferguson, the kid from Oregon, probably a 5th round pick, really big. That's the player that every single day was the most reliable. Mason Taylor had the best athletic profile and then the best production based on that athletic profile. Harold Fannin from Bowling Green, kind of like Arroyo, didn't get open as much as I thought he would. Now, Fannin would make difficult catches, and I went into the week just like waiting to fall in love with Harold Fannin, and it didn't happen. Like he was okay. He was all right. Didn't mind him. It wasn't bad per se. Like Arroyo wasn't bad, but it's like, you're that athletic. You're known as a receiver. Harold Fannin had 1,500 yards a year ago, not as his career at Bowling Green. He had 1,500 yards a year ago and 130 yards against Penn State, the best team he played. Although he's kind of, I don't know, watch it, guys. Watch the video I posted. Like, yeah. He was kind of pissed when I asked him about the Penn State game. I was like, that was your best game, dude. Like, it doesn't matter if you didn't win. Like, got to get out of that college mindset. Anyway, so I look at these tight ends. Ferguson was the best. Taylor showed the best for his athletic profile. Fannin was disappointing, but he was okay. And Arroyo was disappointing, but he was okay.
So Arroyo is one of those guys too. Like he doesn't have the size that, like, yeah, I believe he's like 6'4", but a little bit on the thinner side as well. And he could just be one of those guys. Like if he's doesn't have the run blocking ability, which has been, made very apparent by anybody who watches him. And he's a little bit clumsy coming in and out of his breaks. I just worry that he doesn't have anything where he's able to kind of manhandle people in college. Those skills don't always translate to the NFL. And there's a lot of red flags for me with Arroyo.
Yeah.
Is that kind of where you're at as well, Cease?
Yeah. Red flags abound there because if you're not getting the separation, you're not going to win with size and boxing guys out. That's one thing about Ferguson, the Oregon kid, is that he would box people out. He knew how to use his huge. He would use that frame. Fannin would try it, although his frame's a little bit smaller, but it wasn't as successful.
Small.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Fann's like 230 pounds.
Yes.
He's sort of like that H-back Jonnu Smith almost.
Yes, and Jonnu Smith is a good comparison, but I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've seen so much, but I believe I saw Jonnu at one of these games. I know I saw Isaiah Likely, who I was like, that's guys like Jonnu Smith.
Yes.
So but I didn't get the Jonnu feel. Doesn't mean they can't develop, doesn't mean they can't get better, but I was like, and maybe it's me, just like I really expected Harold Fannin not to work his way into the first round. I mean, there's so much pre-draft or pre-Senior Bowl stuff. Like, he could be a first-round pick. No, he's not. He's not a first-round pick. Most first-round picks aren't first-round picks. But can I tell you about some sleepers?
Please do. Yes.
Okay, because since we're talking tight end, I have to talk to you about Luke Lachey at the Shrine Bowl. He's the Iowa tight end. Medicals are going to be huge for him. In 2023, he had an ankle injury, and the scouts that I talked to said that after that, he hasn't been the same. Well, he's really good in Dallas, really good at the Shrine Bowl, and his pro comp is, if healthy, if he gets back from that ankle, it's Sam Laporta, who is his guy. I told him, I was making fun of him about George Kittle's hair. He's got really nice hair. It's not wild like mine, but I was like, you gonna get some George Kittle hair, man? Like, come on. So the Iowa tight end line might continue with Luke Lachey. Not enough people are talking about him. He had an outstanding week at the Shrine Bowl. And if medicals check out, he'll be like a 5th-round pick. But again, Kittle was a 5th-round pick. How many 3rd-round, 5th-round picks of tight ends that just explode? Travis Kelce might be the best tight end of all time. He's a mid-round pick. So, we fall in love with the Tyler Warrens. Got plenty of love for Colston Loveland. But this tight end class is so thick. If I missed on one of those early guys, oh, man, I didn't get Tyler Warren because the Colts got him because he's Dallas Clark, right? That's the easiest comp ever. Okay, Luke Lachey in the 5th sounds pretty good to me.
Another son of an NFL player,
Yep.
Jim Lachey's son there. Yeah. And you
Yep.
talk about the medical concerns. Do you think if he was healthy, he probably would be, probably a day 2 pick? I think that's where he'd fall in, but that
Yep.
ankle injury is a big concern. But
Yep.
I'm almost at the point, I know we're not supposed to scout the helmet, but if there's an Iowa or a tight end getting drafted out of Iowa, I'm just going to take him in my dynasty leagues. I don't care what I got to pay for.
Yep. Do that. And another thing that I've often done, and we've mentioned it before, like, look at where either they were before and then they transferred, because the transfer, it's the Wild West in college football, as we know. But I also go back and look at who was recruiting them, who wanted this guy coming out of college, and that's something where sometimes they do wind up at Bowling Green. It doesn't matter. But if Iowa was on somebody's trail and he happened to go to Alabama or something as a tight end, I'm like, well, Iowa liked him. Okay, that means a lot to me. So it's not an exact science. I get annoyed on air when one of my coworkers on the fan says the draft is a crapshoot. No, it's not. If the draft is a crapshoot, that means you could take Spencer Rattler #1 overall, right? Because it's a crapshoot. It's total crapshoot. It's not a crapshoot. There is skill involved in this and understanding what you're seeing, when you're seeing it. And this is the last time we got to see these guys play football. Think about that. That's why I love the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl. It's the last football that they play before they play for us at the NFL level.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to know specifically with Lachey, because he's a guy, when I watched the film, nothing stood out. He's one of those guys that he's kind of good at everything, not great at anything. But obviously film versus seeing someone in person, totally different. See, so what stood out to you? Because we could say Iowa, big time tight end prospects every single year. They're scouting the guy. He's obviously talented. What stood out to you that can actually make him be one of these guys that's producing early or whenever in the NFL?
He's smart. He knows how to sit down in his zone. There wasn't any sort of coverage that would fool him. Not that they're doing exotic coverages there, and he was reliable for his quarterback. Again, using that frame, the basketball skill set really cements me when I'm watching tight ends. I was like, okay, he knows what to do with his body. With Lachey, he knew how to do that. Plus, there's no tackling, but guys would thud him and he'd hold on to the ball. So it's like, you're going to try to knock the ball away. Shiloh Sanders, who's the dirtiest player in college football, runs around, tries to knock the ball out, and you're just not going to knock the ball out from Lachey. So he's tough, savvy, smooth. Again, maybe not the athletic profile that, he's not the speedster. He doesn't have the athletic profile of a Mason Taylor. He doesn't have the athletic profile of Elijah Arroyo. But he knows how to use his frame. He finds a soft spot in his zone. You can't take the ball away from him. Quarterback's best friend. Sounds like a good tight end to take in day 3 for me.
All right, last 2 guys I want to talk to you about here, both from the Shrine Bowl. One of them being one of those unequivocal winners that everyone really liked, and it's Efton Chism III, wide receiver out of Eastern Washington. And I think for many obvious reasons, he's going to get the Cooper Kupp comp from a lot of people.
Yeah.
Slot receiver.
A lot of people saying he'd look great in a Josh McDaniels Patriots offense.
Yeah. Got a lot of the similar features. But he's another one of these physical slot receivers. The analytics, the numbers look great. He's a crafty route runner, great hands, strong physical player. Similar to Bech, a lot of these slot receivers that are physical and strong, good at getting open and reliable hands, they tend to be successful in the league because they can kind of do whatever's asked of them. So Efton Chism, a name that not a lot of people knew before this process. I'm sure not a lot of people will even know him if and when he gets drafted. So
Yes.
what did you think about him when you saw him at the Shrine Bowl?
I will say this, and I'll say it emphatically. He's not Cooper Kupp, but he's Danny Amendola.
Yeah.
And I saw Danny Amendola at the Texans versus the Nation game down there in El Paso. The game only existed for 2 years, but I was there for both of them. And, well, guess what? Danny Amendola was the comp that I had. Because again, he's got the quickness, he's got the hands, he takes everything seriously, which is something again that I also like. And maybe some of my notes are similar on these players because it's like, were you trying? Did you show that full effort? Some guys, like a Jimmy Horn Jr. from CU who was there, he's just naturally gifted, naturally talented, going to jump off the page because of that. But when you're a guy like Chism, you've got to go out there and hustle. You got to go out there and try. So many people are doubting you. And again, not Cooper Kupp. That was kind of the buzz from the scouts I was standing around watching practice. Like, he's not Cooper Kupp. But I'll tell you this, he's Danny Amendola, and he can make plays for your team. Again, as a late round pick. And that's what most players are at the Shrine Bowl. A couple of exceptions, Jimmy Horn being one of those. But like Chism, take him on day 3. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get full force effort.
Last guy on here ended up being the Shrine Bowl MVP and probably one of the weirdest college careers I've ever seen. 6 seasons in college football, 4 of them at Alabama State, never rushed for more than 500 yards while there, has this crazy 5th season breakout at New Mexico State for 1,200 yards and 17 touchdowns, and then a weird eligibility issue in 2024 where basically Jacory Croskey-Merritt, running back from Arizona, essentially didn't get to play in his final year and then shows up to this game, has what seemed to be some good practices, and then a really explosive game. So talk to us about what you saw here with him.
His favorite player is Mark Ingram. And he was one of my favorite players to watch in both weeks of practice. And unfortunately, they're the same week now. So I got to go to Dallas for 2 days and then go to Mobile for 2 days instead of being able to enjoy a week at each place. I'm complaining either way. Jacory Croskey-Merritt was one of my favorite players to watch. His legs hit the ground like a jackhammer. When he changes direction, he's almost punishing the ground that he has to move, that he has to change direction. And that allows those crisp cuts, explosive plays, and the ability to kind of burst into that second level and the linebacker level. So showed good hands, showed great intent as a runner. He also has good patience, something I talked to him about after practice one of the days is like Jacory Croskey-Merritt, probably undrafted, but he's going to be one of my favorite players to watch. And super deep dynasty, hell yeah, I'm getting Jacory Croskey-Merritt because no one else is going to know about the guy unless you're New Mexico State alum.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys that's going to come so cheap in dynasty drafts. Like you said, draft him at the very end. Kind of reminds me of like a Kene Nwangwu, like a guy that I really, really liked that I held on to my dynasty taxi rosters for 3 years. But, has the ability, if you can, lands in the right offense where they can get him in space and let him make plays. He's got some fun athleticism.
Yeah, for sure. And again, a player with great intent and a player that if you want a 3-down back, kind of an out of nowhere back. And we've seen this before, Terrell Davis. And again, I'm bringing up a Hall of Famer for the love of God. Jacory Croskey-Merritt's not going to the Hall of Fame. Let me just say that. But Terrell Davis was at Long Beach State for a couple of years, transferred to Georgia. His coaches didn't like him. He was playing fullback. And then he went on to be a Hall of Famer. So we've seen it before where guys have to bounce around and maybe they're in Willie Parker's coach didn't like him. And then he was a multi-1,000-yard back in the NFL. So it's like Jacory Croskey-Merritt, something's there and some smart team's going to pick him up and take a chance. I saw Blake Watson at this game. I still love Blake Watson dynasty-wise. But I saw Blake Watson at this game and it kind of reminded me that Watson's a better receiver. Jacory Croskey-Merritt's a better runner, a different style runner because of that power and that Mark Ingram type of skill set.
Well, I mean, I don't think it just is limited to quarterbacks, but I think we're seeing that fit matters for every single one of these positions, whether it's college, pros, whatever it is, with players transferring more and more. We're going to see a lot more of these weird careers and then players really trying to up their resumes when they get into these pre-draft processes and what kind of workouts and all-star games they can do. This was awesome. Cease, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to keep doing this every year until, of course, you say you're not going to do it. And then we're just going to send Dave out there because he loves the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl.
Yeah, I think I did a good job.
Bring back the
Texas
Texas game, too.
cynicism to myself today.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm proud of you. That's called growth, Dave.
Mhm.
Dave and I will be back again next week as we kick off looking at the rookies leading up into the pre-draft process. We're going to be talking about free agents as well. There's so many things still going on here in the offseason. So if you were around during the regular season and you think I'm just going to hibernate and not be around here for the offseason, we have so much for you guys. So make sure you're subscribed here. You're checking out the Audible as well, where you've got Cease and Sig who have been doing this for over 18 years. We're going into year 19, right?
You're 20.
You're 12. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They grow up so fast, kids.
Be able to
grow up
buy
so
the
fast.
Audible beer next year.
We'll be drinking next
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
And of course, also check out the Football Guys Dynasty show as well. We've got the Football Guys Rookie Guide coming out very, very soon. So keep your eyes open for that. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching and listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, for Cecil, we'll see you next time. Adios.